Well, hello, lovely listeners. Today I have a real honor, actually, because my guest today has become a friend over the last few months. His name is Michael Mandaville, and I met Michael through a program that we were both doing with the wonderful Guy and Alan Ferdman, who have been on this podcast as well. And Michael is very into his self-development, personal growth, spiritual development, truth development, all kinds of community development, all kinds of development. Michael is pushing all the way, and he's at the forefront of all of that. So anyway, me and Michael connected, and we've become friends because we're both fellow truth seekers as well. We have lots to talk about all the time. And Michael actually works in Hollywood, and for 25 years now, he's worked as a producer, a line producer, get my words out, and a UPM. Not sure what that is. Perhaps Michael can enlighten us shortly. He's also an internet entrepreneur working in the streaming social media environments. And some of the films he's worked on include Taken, Taken 2, Taken 3, obviously Liam Neeson, and written and produced by Luc Besson. Also Above Suspicion, starring Emilia Clarke, and directed by Philip Noyce. And Havoc with Anne Hathaway. I don't think I've seen that one. Yeah, he's a serial entrepreneur and currently pursuing media, blockchain, and project financing through international finance. And I also know from our conversations, Michael, I know you've done a load more, and what you don't know about history and world wars isn't worth knowing. So I'm sure you'll get onto that at some point. Yeah, I've completely forgotten where I was going. I was about to say something then, and it obviously wasn't important because it's gone. So I'm going to hand over. That was really annoying. Yeah, so I'm going to hand over to you. I know there's loads I've not covered there because you've done so much. Oh, I know what I was going to say. And I also know that you are writing letters to royalty and Christ knows who else around the world to encourage them to use their position to have positive impact where they live. So that was the other thing that I was thinking of.
Oh, sure.
So welcome. It is amazing to have you. Thank you so much for agreeing to be on.
Absolutely. No, I love the title of the broadcast, Never Settle. And I think that's a brilliant way to engage people right away. And I think that's true because of the emotional sensibility of pushing one's dream forward, by never settling for something. Society would like you to do that, I think, in many ways. And if you look at it, most of the people around you are saying, oh, no, you could never do that. Yeah. I mean, your family and your friends are the ones, by and large, are the people saying, don't do it, and about taking a risk or something. So I like the Never Settle podcast. I was looking forward to it. Besides, you and I are such chatterboxes. I said, wow, we should be productive with that. And here we are.
And here we are. Here we are. So I always love my guests to give a little bit of their backstory and what was the inspiration for you? You know, how did you get to where you've got to now? Obviously, you've done a lot of things, and some people are going to be very impressed with the Hollywood connection and all of that. So give us a bit of your backstory. What was Little Michael all about? And was Little Michael the same as Big Michael?
Well, that's a good question there. Still likes chocolate, so there's a yes there. Definitely have that one. That's a very good question. When I was growing up, I grew up in West Los Angeles, and my father's sister, my aunt, Molly, worked at 20th Century Fox with Darryl Zanuck, and she worked there for 1935 to about 1970, more or less, for a very long time. So when I was growing up, she was an extraordinary influence, and she would take us into the studio. It was Aunt Molly's studio over on Pico Boulevard, and everybody knew her. And here you were, dropped into this fantastic world of movie sets and stages and dark rooms where they made magic and everything else. So I think as a kid, I was kind of drawn to that. And
did she meet Marilyn Monroe? I've just got to ask that.
Oh, she met Marilyn Monroe. Cary Grant was a good friend of hers. Um, Clifton Webb, Shirley Temple. I met John Ford there, Alfred Hitchcock. I was a kid, hi, how are you? And a gruff hello, I think, still qualifies as meeting. Um, and so a lot of people, she knew a lot of people in Hollywood because she worked right next to Darryl Zanuck, and there were basically the seven great studios, Warner Brothers, Columbia, MGM, etc. And she was at one of them, working right next to one of the moguls of Hollywood. So she met a who's who of Hollywood, and she was indefatigably curious and a bit eccentric, and could speak French and Spanish. She taught herself, so she was very motivated. At this time, of course, here she was, a woman in Hollywood, not exactly a place that one didn't have to overachieve to get somewhere, which I always admired. And years later, it was very interesting because when reigniting that direction, I called people that she had worked with, and you had some interesting, very interesting reactions. One was, oh, she was very good at her notes, and she would type up, because she was like a script consultant with Darryl Zanuck. So there's probably the writer part of me that comes in as well.
Mm.
And one said, well, you could see in these conferences, we'd have about a script that she would come in, take all these notes, and the next day you'd have like 12 or 15 typed, no computers, pages, perfectly typed. But he said if you read it really well, you'd see how she was gently moving the whole subject to the direction she believed. And I thought, oh, that's pretty good. And then somebody else commented, I met like Frank McCarthy, who produced Patton with George C. Scott, by writing letters to them and just saying, hey, I'd like to meet with you. I met with Richard Zanuck on the same basis as well, I think when I was 20, something like that, after she had passed away. And a couple of them had some interesting remarks going, oh, yeah, she was tough, and another said, yep, she knew exactly what she was doing. She knew what was going on at that studio. And then he paused and he goes, and you didn't mess with her. And of course, I'm like, sweet Aunt Molly, who gave me marzipan chocolates. Oh, that's a different side. So she, I'd say, would be a huge inspiration. She read enormously. So when I was 3, 4, or 5 years old, I was reading books. Uh, um, not comic books or anything. I mean, actual books, Hemingway or Steinbeck or a lot of other things. So I read a lot. I still do. And I think that taking in knowledge, certainly, and then taking action with the knowledge is a key. And kind of touches on so many things in terms of seeking truth today, as well as history, as well as writing, as well as creating, which I do novels. I've written novels and animations and nonfiction books or scripts that I've worked on. Is the more knowledge you have, the more you could draw from for inspiration as well.
So when obviously Aunt Molly was your big inspiration, and she sounds like an amazing character. Was it that connection that enabled you to get easier into, that's not very grammatically correct, but get into Hollywood easier, or was it all on your own merits? Was it something that just came a bit later and you wanted to follow the same sort of path?
It really didn't help, because she had passed away. I think I was about 12, something like that. So when I actually went off to school, went through high school, went off to college, came back and said, I'm going to start going into this industry. I all her associates were either very retired or no longer active in the business, really. So it was mostly a nice memory. But I think what it did give me, like when I met with Richard Zanuck, who was still active, he did Jaws, he did a lot of other movies with David Brown. and he was very gracious. And it kind of, actually, I sent the letter, I typed up the letter, and I said, fretted over it for about a week, and then I finally sent it off. And then I think I sent it on a Monday. Must have arrived there Tuesday. And then on Wednesday, I got a call going, "Hello, this is Richard Zanuck's office. Calling for Michael Mandaville. Would you like to come in tomorrow?" And I'm like,
Wow.
"What? What? Do you have the right number? What's going on here?" So I went in to meet him. And I think, if anything, I did that to a number of people, David Brown and Frank McCarthy. I said, why not? What are they gonna say? No? And I'm in the same spot, so why not?
Yeah.
And what was interesting about that, though, is the emotional element of drive, that I was going to take action to find my way somewhere in this path. And that if it's a bit of a game, okay, let's play. And if you do make life a bit of a game, you feel it's less weighty on your shoulders, like it's a life or death decision. And I think there's great merit in that, because then if you're playing a game, a board game or whatever it is, and you're playing with fun and zeal and enthusiasm, then any of the quote unquote defeats you take, and you just keep rolling to play the overall game.
Mm.
And I think having that in life versus, oh my God, I don't know if I should do this or not, and all that weight on your head. It's like when I'll tell you the story whenever you want. When I did stand-up comedy, and I took a class in that, and I had to go up on the Sunset Strip at the Comedy Store up there, and in the green belly room is what they call it, I believe. And so I was just like enormously terrified, right? I mean, stand-up comedy. That's not like I've done improv, but you might be in an improv group, 2 or 3 people go, "Okay, Mel, I'm really not doing well here. Rescue me, and I'll help you, and you help me." But stand-up comedy, you're on your own. And so, can I tell the story now?
Yeah, go for it.
Oh. So I always wanted to try stand-up comedy. And I mentioned that to my friends, and I go, "Hey, you want to take the class with me?" And everybody's like, no,
No chance.
not a chance am I going to do that. And throughout the years, I've only encountered, I think, 2 or 3 people that said, "Yeah, I wanted to try that." Maybe 2, 3. So you take the class, which I think is brilliant, and give you all sorts of exercises and ways to work it. And one example that's is very, very good is when you have that inner critic, as you walk about 15 feet to one side. So your performance space, and I think this works with the Never Settle podcast too, is here's the space that I'm performing in right here. Well, 15 feet that way or that way, whatever way you want to go, is the critic. And you literally physically walk 15 feet away or something, turn, look at your performance, and then tell you, oh, you could be doing this or that, doing better. And I've removed my performance space and my critic space to separate physical areas. And I think that was not just a good lesson in stand-up, because now you don't have these 2 voices when you're performing running around your head.
Interesting.
And yeah, I thought it was very fascinating, because I actually, even not doing stand-up, I went, oh, okay, if I'm doing something, and like I'm practicing a presentation here for something in the next month or 2, and I will literally walk away and go, okay, what could you do better there? And I'll just literally physically walk away and go, oh yeah, Mike, I think you should do this. And I always say it in third person. And so it's a kind of interesting removal. And so anyways, I went, did that. It's the night that I'm going to perform. And the previous night, literally while sleeping, I had to change my shirt 3 times, because I was sweating so much. Now I am sleeping and sweating. It's like my brain is working overtime like this and creating all this fear. And I get there, and it's something I always wanted to do. So it's always this compelling notion. And I've seen actors that literally, before they perform on camera, get physically sick. And but they still are compelled to perform, and some well-known ones. And so I get there to the Comedy Store, I park, I go in, and you know, I'm now my brain is just spinning up, and you invite your friends, and there's this level when you go in, you go to the back office area in the green room where the comics are, and there's a little passage that goes up, and there's a glass window, and my brain literally starts going, you know what? And it's funny, this is the inner fear brain critic, whatever, goes, you could smash this window, climb on the roof, shimmy down that rain pipe you saw, and run down the street, and you would only have to apologize to 10 or 12 people. And it's, I'm literally looking at my coat going, yeah, I could probably do that. And I think I could use my elbow. And I tested the glass. And I mean, you know, and you, at the moment, you're just sitting there going, this is a total realistic possibility, right?
So you didn't walk 15 feet and say, Mike, get a grip.
Yeah, no. That's the mistake I think I made, is I was so enveloped in it all. I didn't go, where was my inner critic? Where'd you go, dude? You know, help me out here. And ultimately, of course, I went up on stage. You do that. You do your 7 minutes. It's not even that big. And at the end of it, you go, oh, my God, thank God that's over, number one. But you go, oh, that wasn't so bad. And then, you know, I think I did about 40 or 50 times, maybe 60, somewhere in there, open mics and other things. And by number 20 or something like that, you're like, you know, if somebody's saying something, you're like, hey, you, yeah, you, I'm talking to you. And of course, people in the audience are like, you know, they're like, oh no, he's calling on me. And so there's a, you know, valuable lesson. And I don't want to go the college circuit and sleep on crappy couches and do that whole thing there. But I learned a lot of valuable lessons about performance, or writing jokes, or timing, or working with other people, how to speed things up so you keep getting laughs per minute, LPMs as they call it, right? And how you can keep shortening that to where you have a callback where I bring up a previous piece of work and then I get another laugh. And sometimes really short lines can add to another laugh and the laugh per minute. But it was a real interesting experience, you know, in retrospect, about fear and that voice coming in. And the voice was there while I was sleeping. I think that was probably one of the more astounding things, that somewhere it was still spinning while I am literally sleeping or trying to, whatever I was doing. But it shows you how the power of the mind can be guided, or is there to protect you in a necessary or unnecessary way. But you can, with your will, overcome that and still go to something that you're feeling more in the heart and less in the brain to do. So it's interesting how you could have these certain life lessons about things that, like when I wrote a script, I gave it to this producer and he said, well, this kind of seems like a first draft script. And I kind of think it was maybe 1.5 drafts or something. And he goes, what you should do is do the script absolutely the best, so that when anybody criticizes it, you can truly say, totally fine. I hear what you're saying. That's your opinion. I like what I wrote. I'm moving forward. Almost to create a sense of dedication that's an armor. I'm not saying you're not listening to the criticism. Could be useful. But one where you have put in the work to justify what you're doing, to not settle and keep marching forward. So these are interesting little beats in our lives we all have that they resonate for a long time, right?
And the stand-up comedy, was that desire you know, a stepping out your comfort zone, an experience, you wanted to know what it felt like, Was it that, as well as maybe helping you in your writing and understanding of comedy in the work that you do? You know, so what was the big thing for that?
It was, I've always wanted to do this, and it scares the crap out of me, so I have to do it. That
Okay.
was absolutely the decision. And I said, I'm just going to jump into that. I got to figure out how to do it. And I just wanted to see what it was like. But if you're up there, and I did okay in the first one, okay to good, low good. um, but some other times I got some really good laughs. So it was a very interesting experience. But it was definitely that got a fear and I'm gonna get around it kind of vibe.
Yeah.
So I distinctly remember that decision there. And but it's funny because your reticular articulating system, which as soon as you focus on that, if you say I want to learn tennis or whatever, and then you drive the same route you've been driving from home to some other place for years, all of a sudden you go, there's a tennis shop there. I never knew that. And
Mm.
then, oh, look, there's people with rackets. Oh, there's a tennis park right down there. So now your brain focuses and starts picking out these pieces to serve you, to help you. And I think that's kind of an interesting thing. If you realize you have to make the realization that the system is there. Oh, if I focus, then it will start coming to me, the solutions. And one thing I actually was creating this last week was something called some videos for social media called diversionary brainstorming. And it's basically I have a little notebook, and I like this. This is one technique, and I always write in it um, with a Sharpie, and I write a question. And then if I'm off doing something, I literally write, how can I make more money, or how do I do stand-up comedy, or whatever it is. And then I go off into the garden, or which is really great, or work around the house, do it yourself projects, or whatever. And I'm diverted. And then all of a sudden the brain pops up and is working on that question and goes, oh, here's an answer. And I
Wow.
just pull out the notebook because it's nice big cards. Then the next part, I might say, how do Mel and Michael get out more truth in the world? And maybe that's the question. And then I might go, oh, we'll do it. A podcast, card one. And then, while there you go, oh, well, we're going to get a group on a social media network. Just really hard evidence people. Where did you see this? And, so a little, but I start to get all the cards. So this is just ideas. And then you start to put the ideas on a table. You could tear them off and they're a deck, and now shuffle them around. And pretty soon you go, oh, there's a little pattern here. There's a way to line these up sequentially or together. You start to play with it, gamify. And I've gotten an enormous number of ideas that way throughout a few decades. And it makes it easier because your brain, much like my sweaty night about stand-up comedy, was working while I was sleeping, apparently very fearfully, but working. So when you're diverting, the brain eases into something and answers that question, even if you're working in the garden. And I've got literally dozens of these notebooks, and I've used them over the years. That just something simple like that.
I love that. Yeah, that's something really inspiring and practical for the audience, for the listeners to be able to do. And I'm thinking about doing it myself, because it's also like, well, it's a physical intention, isn't it? And like, I'll do things in my head, but
No,
you don't always remember, right? But it's allowing the divine and the inspiration. It's like through meditation, or you're in the shower, or you're doing whatever, and all of a sudden you go, oh, where did that come from? It's the same sort
that's
of thing.
exactly.
Yeah. But I like that visual, writing it in a card, notepad. because you can refer back to that as well. And then you'll be like, oh, bloody hell, actually, that did come up and I'd forgotten all
Yeah.
about it, you know, and all of that. So yeah, I like that.
And
Come.
oh, and I was just going to say that, as you know, because I know of your incredible studies in pursuit of how the mind is working and how you can guide it and tame it and work with it, etc. The mind has so much chatter in that inner critic, and you have to just say, thank you very much for your advice, and I'm moving on, that kind of vibe, make it a friendly thing. But it's also like when you have an idea and it's not even written down, and you go up to your attic and yell into the attic, here's my idea, and then you leave. Then you go, I got to go find that idea. Well, it's nonsensical, but if you actually literally write down your question, and you have kinesthesia, so the connective eye-hand coordination of the writing of the pen, not on a computer, not on your phone, but actually writing it to your brain, has a sculpting quality, sculpture, music, writing. I mean, things done with the hands, because now you're actually in a finer point of creation. I think there's a huge connection with this.
Yeah.
Playing an instrument. And I know you're a musician. So when you actually start banging around on the keyboard, you actually you go, oh, that sounds pretty good. You get that little blink, right? And that's what the advantage of this is. Yes, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, absolutely. Musician in the loosest term. I'm practicing guitar. I'm getting better at guitar, but yes, I am a singer. Anyway, what I'd like to ask you, and this is such a Hollywood question to ask before we carry on with you and your journey, and only answer if you want to answer. Yeah, who's the nicest person you've worked with in Hollywood, and who's the worst?
Oh boy. So I can answer the first and the second. I have to say, I think some degree of that has to do with at what level they are at. And people that are, in a broad sense, A-listers, in many cases are nicer and less needy than the, shall we just say, B-listers trying to be on set with some degree of competition.
Right.
I would tend to say Liam was definitely one of the nicest people to work with. He's very when you have a contract and you know the terms of it, and you just go, well, that's the deal the guy made, so let's honor the contract. And in Hollywood, people are always trying to get around things. The producer is trying to save money and do this or not fulfill something, and then let's say actors asking for a lot. And in today's world, with the crush and change of the media landscape today, i.e. too much, there's so many programs on TV, things are so costly, inflation is hitting hard, etc. So there's a new equation here, and streaming only, instead of what used to be a model of runs, and then reruns, and then syndication, and then international TV. They have 4 levels of revenue. Now you have just streaming. So the economics have changed a lot. Liam is very nice, and on the first time doing the First Taken movie, I'll tell you a little story, is we were shooting on Hollywood Boulevard, or intending to. It's the very first day. And with Pierre Morel, who did Taken One, who was a very nice guy, very talented. And we have to have him go to a music store down, electronic store with like a boombox kind of thing down on the Hollywood Boulevard. So it's about 11. I'm trying to think how many hours we were in. He was on set, and I think we were there. It's like 11:15, 11:20 on the clock. And his assistant came out and said, Michael, Liam would like to speak to you. And I went, Oh, okay. Um, and so I went in, and he had his contract laid out on the table with a highlighter, was just sitting there open to this page. And he goes, I am, just so you know, I'm 12 hours portal to portal, meaning when he gets picked up at the hotel to where he goes back to the hotel, there should be 12 hours, not picked up, arrive on set, start the 12 hours, finish
Right.
on set 12 and drive back. So I said, oh, well, that's news to me. And he goes, Michael, you really can't think we're going to do this scene and get out of here and get me back to my hotel in 12 hours, right? And remember, it's day one. This is not the day you ask for a favor, if there is one to be asked for. Anyway, so I said, well, let me, because you can't think we're going to do the scene. He said, well, let me go check. And I said, I I have to wear the coat. I'm a line producer on the project. I have the coat of a pessimist, but the heart of an optimist. So give me 3 minutes. And so I went outside, I checked, and they go, oh yeah, we'll be ready in 20 minutes, 25, then we'll shoot in this. And there's no way this is going to happen, right? And it was an isolated scene, so we could reset it somewhere else. I knew that. And I said, okay, just never mind. We'll just wrap it up. And I'll send Liam on his way. And that's it for the night. Just wrap. So I went in and I said, yeah, we're going to wrap the scene. We'll scratch this right now. It's an ISO. We'll be fine. And you should just go, get your car ready. I notified your driver and head back. And he kind of like looked at me like, and he gets up, and he's kind of a tall guy. And he comes over and he goes, are you sure? And I go, yeah, it's fine. We'll figure it out. It's an isolated scene. We'll set it up some other time and get it. Not a problem. Then he kind of grabbed my shoulders and he shook me and he goes, are you sure? And then we wound up talking for about 30 minutes. So I thought, here's a guy who just said, this is my deal, and just honored the deal, and things are all great. And you always prove that over the next couple of movies as well. So I definitely give him high marks, but there's been a lot of nice people that are like, no problem, don't worry about it, and that actually you feel you have to cater to a little bit more, and they're like, no, it's fine, I don't need that. And throughout the years, a number of people. The worst, I don't know if I could name anybody, but I can tell you that I've had actors that show up hours late, even though they're getting paid an enormous amount of money, who get a lot of visits on set from their multiple relationships, some marital, some extramarital, and then becomes a like, okay, who's here and where and whatever kind of thing. It's kind of puts a lot of strain on people to go. I think the epitome of that was the Brad Pitt, Angelina Jolie movie, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, where literally I think the assistant directors were like, oh, yeah, Brad, I think he's over there. I mean, it becomes this kind of weird chess maneuvering.
So that whole denial, they said they weren't having an affair on the set and all the rest of it, but clearly they were.
Yeah. And so, I mean, over at Universal, and some have extraordinarily long lists of requests, and some are, very wishy-washy about things, because as soon as they get you to pay for something, like pay for a house, I've had this. They go, oh yeah, I don't like the hotel, I like a house. And you go, okay, I know. As soon as I pay for that house, you're not going to like that house and want to go back to the hotel, and I'm stuck with the bill. And so a number of those kinds, I go, we want you to be happy and go wherever you want. Here's the allotted money, you pick.
Right.
But here's the allotted money, so I don't get double billed, kind of thing. And that's the only way to curtail someone's choices, when it's basically a wide open purse, I guess one would think, or people tended to think that. Forrest Whitaker was very nice on the last Taken movie. He was very quiet and accommodating. He's a martial arts guy. He did Kemper for a long time, which I do. So a number, a lot of the actors are pretty nice. It's it gets to be some of the people that you meet outside the job you're doing. Do you know an actress by the name of Patty Duke?
I don't think so.
Well, she did a lot of early television, I think in the 60s, and then later on went on to become, I think, president of the Screen Actors Guild and a number of other things. But it was one time, I always remember this because I was shooting on a stage in downtown Los Angeles, and I was walking back to where we were filming, and there's Patty Duke out on the dock just smoking a cigarette. And she was just standing there, and I just went up and I said, hello, Miss Duke. I just wanted to say I've admired your work. And she did some extraordinary things, going from a TV actress kind of in a nonsensical comedy kind of thing to some more serious work later. And I just said, I just wanted to say I like this and this and this and, stuff you'd worked in. And I meant it. And she was like, well, first of all, it's Patty, not Miss Duke. And, and then we wound up talking for like 30 minutes, just standing there. And I don't know. So those interesting things where, this is a pretty down to earth person,
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people look at it like a job. And I think that there was a very good two or three things that I've heard about some films. One was, I think there was one called with Dustin Hoffman, who was doing a thriller with Roy Scheider. I can't think of the name of the movie right now. And Laurence Olivier. And Dustin Hoffman, like being a method actor, stayed up for 3 days sweating and everything else just to get this frantic feel. And which he got on camera, more of a method actor. And Laurence Olivier just said, it's much easier acting, dear boy. And the same with Alec Guinness. I think 10 days, Hitler's last 10 days, he played Adolf Hitler in the bunker. And he would go from being Hitler to just going, oh, can I have some tea? And it was like kind of, but it's acting, right? And I think there's a much workmanlike profession. And then this kind of distortion of one's true self just for performance sake. And I don't know how that affects people in their totality.
Well, yeah, the one that comes to mind is Jim Carrey, because I know, I wondered if you'd met him actually, because he played the French comedian. Is he French comedian? That film that he did, where REM did Man on the Moon, and it was about that film.
Oh,
Do you know something? Oh my goodness, I can't think of the guy's name. I think he was a French comedian. I've probably totally got that wrong. But anyway, so, he lived and breathed this guy. And when REM asked him to be part of the video, because they were making the video for the theme tune "Man on the Moon," and he refused because he'd had so much of it. He couldn't. It literally sent him a bit mental. And he just couldn't face going back into that. But I wanted to ask you, A, whether you'd met him, but B, because Jim seems to be one actor that has stood against the establishment and called it out on a number of occasions through interviews on mainstream TV and all the rest of it. And he's also had some bad press, hasn't he? I remember in the news a few years ago, apparently he beat his girlfriend up or something. I don't know whether that was true or not. But yeah, have you ever met Jim, and what's your thoughts on him?
I have not met him. I certainly think that he was probably, I mean, I worked with people that did the first Ace Ventura Pet Detective, and then they did Dumb and Dumber. And it was a group called MPCA. I was doing a different movie, but I remember when I think they did Dumb and Dumber first because they were going to do it as a low budget movie. And then I think New Line Cinema came in and the budget went from 3 million to, or something like that, 3 million, which was big for an indie movie at the time, or modest, good size, to like 10 million. And then all of a sudden it took off and he had a major career. And then he did Ace Ventura, Pet Detective. And I think not since you had Jerry Lewis or someone like that with those kind of distortions in the face and kind of zaniness. So he had a certain very unique delivery that still has plenty of memes going around. I'll say that. And I think if you see Liar Liar or you see Ace Ventura, you see some of this, you go, God, I'm not sure how anybody else but him could do that. No. Because it's just so live wire and unpredictable. But I also think over the recent years, he was gravitating towards comedy, which everybody wanted him to do. And that's where he made his money and did his bit and became well known for. But then a number of comedians tend to go, oh, I want to be a serious actor, or I want to be a serious actor, philosopher, or something. And you just wonder, you go, okay, well, what's your qualifications for either of those? And, what you made your money in is not what the public wants you to see. I mean, they just don't buy it. And I think he did one that was him being a serial killer or something. I mean, I can't remember I can remember the poster, but not the show. I didn't see it because I didn't want to watch it. But I don't know why, people try different careers to become hyphenates in some way. And I think that's good that they're trying to grow. I just think when you're dealing with mass media, that a lot of people's expectations are against that, and they're not going to buy into it. So it becomes a bit of a double-edged sword. Your own success kind of limits what you can do.
It's what you can do. Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that's challenging.
Okay. So the other question I wanted to ask, and so when one of the first things I said to you, or not one of the first things, but when we started, so me and Michael do this weekly meditation, for want of a better phrase, and very often on those calls we'll end up talking, chewing the cud about what's going on in the world, and or what we think is going on in the world. Who the bloody hell knows? But but one of the things I said to you was I was really surprised because the program that me and Michael have done is a energy healing program, and is woo woo, for want of a better phrase, and obviously spiritual and all the rest of it, and is about truth, is about healing, is about authenticity. And so my jaded vision of Hollywood was, surely there aren't people like Michael in Hollywood. That was a massive generalization. And so I said that to him one day, and he just said, yes, that is a massive generalization. And I said, yeah, apologies. But I wondered how, I think my question to him at the time was, knowing, so we believe, or I believe, lots of people believe, that there is quite a dark side to Hollywood in lots of ways. And we all know about the Me movement, and even in the Marilyn Monroe, the most recent movie, it shows her in the office with some pervy exec or whatever. And so I think it's fairly well known that sort of stuff's gone on. And I know Joan, I remember watching an interview with Joan Collins, and she was being chased around the studio by some old pervy producer or whatever, and people were hiding her in their like closets and wardrobes. I mean, it's crazy, isn't it? I think she was about 19 at the time. And so we know there's a dark side to Hollywood. And so it was, I suppose, interesting to me that Michael is obviously not of that world, very spiritually aware, very personally aware. And so my question probably is going to be, after that waffle, is, have you, knowing the world that we believe we believe in, and the dark that is going on and has been going on for a long, long time. Have you been witness to any of that personally, or is it like whispers and you know it's going on and people know it's going on, but you haven't actually seen it or experienced anything?
Well, it definitely has always, it's had a dark side, and like any kind of human activity, has a dark and light side and a good side as well. You can certainly look at politics or industry or media or sports. I imagine I'm not too knowledgeable about that. I definitely early on, movie I did, a young woman came to me through the coordinator, who was a woman, and just said she did not feel very good how she was being treated. She was about 19 years old as a production assistant, and felt somebody was being more sexually aggressive in terms of, and people on a movie set tend to be very quickly gain a sense of camaraderie and friendship and intimacy. And I'm saying intimacy by, you sit there and put in these long hours and see a lot of uh, strenuous, crazy activity. There's a certain bonding element of closeness you get. It's not quite being in a war, but it does feel a bit like a battle, I guess, because you're battling time and money and everything. So there's definitely a closeness there. It just depends, on people understanding certain notions and boundaries. So, anyways, the young woman came to the coordinator, who then talked to me, and ultimately, I said to the producers, "I'm going to check this out and investigate what's going on." And I had also spoke to lawyers. Now that was that was a long time ago, and ultimately fired somebody. And at the same time, could see a lot of blowback from their particular category, saying, this is, nonsense. Why you fired the guy and this and that. And I said, no, I don't think so. I've investigated. Here you go. If you want to dispute it, here's the lawyer's name and this and this. He never did. I've certainly seen a fair amount of drug use. In fact, on one show, the Teamsters usually have to they have to pack up the trailer and take the trailer on to the next location. And I was there watching them load up, and they went in one trailer. Usually you have to take any television or any computer that the actors brought and put it on the floor, because if it's moving around while it's driving, it'll get toppled. So that sort of thing. And a general cleaning, a small kind of thing. They went in the trailer and they came out really fast. And I go, well, what happened? And they go, you take a look. And I went in there, and on a number of surfaces, you're like looking on the surface, and you could start to scrape on the surface into a pile of cocaine. And I mean, like, not an insignificant amount either. But if they get any of that in their bloodstream as a Teamster and randomly tested, they will never work again.
Oh, wow. Right.
So they just bolted out of that trailer. And so, you've certainly seen that. I will know, I had worked with a guy named Corey Haim on something called Double O Kid, and Corey Feldman did show up, and they were lifelong friends, being on Stand By Me. I don't know if it was Stand By Me, but I'm pretty sure.
Lost Boys.
Yeah, Lost Boys, Goonies, I think,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Gremlins or something
I,
like that.
I was a big fan of Corey Haim. I fancied him when I was a kid. Yes.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Yeah.
And he was very nice, but very troubled, very, very troubled. And I think it's kind of telling that the documentary about pedophilia in Hollywood got no play in Hollywood.
Yeah.
I think the general mantra, from what I could gather, certainly gaining steam over the last 5 to 10 years or whatever it is silence is complicity. So does that rule apply in this case? That silence equals complicity? If that's your standard, then that's the standard you have to live with as well. If it's the standard you put forth, I guess it's the one you should be living with.
Mm.
And certainly, I mean, having child performers, you have to have a parent, you have a social worker, deal with the hours, appropriate material they are hearing that their parents are okay with. I mean, on and on. And I've not witnessed anything directly, but I've certainly seen some creepy behavior where I kind of had to say, oh yeah, we're going to have somebody else around here, just watching the kids, making sure they're okay. And I'd say enough behavior that I think on the back of my head, those hairs that go up on the back of your head when you feel something,
Mm.
which was there's a book written by Gavin de Becker called The Gift of Fear. And as you and I talk about energy work, well, it's this mammal-like intuitive behavior that says, pay attention, something's not right. And I would get that on 2 occasions, I would say. And so I basically set somebody who's a very big teamster who has definitely bruised a few people, I would say, kind of watching where the kids area was. And so I think it kind of spooked off a few people from the executive group, shall we say. And so you just get a feeling about certain things like that.
Mm.
Nothing directly I observed, but I think when you get a lot of creative people or people who think they're creative people and into that vortex, kind of it goes back to if you think about Alec Guinness, here was the guy playing Hitler, and then all of a sudden he just turns it right off and goes, oh, can I have tea? And now he's this kind of at least by Americans, probably a quintessential British individual asking for tea and, oh, thank you so much. And you're like, how do you just turn that on and off, right? And I think certainly Hollywood says, well, if I could play Hitler, I must have something like him. I must be like him. How do you?
Yeah.
And I don't think that they are thinking that it's just an art you could turn on or off, or it's part of me and therefore I have to quash it. And I mean, these are pretty big distortions on psychology a lot of people have to work with or live with or embrace as certain licentious behavior and a license to do whatever you want, which is not right. I've seen them, certainly people start getting bossy and ugly with people and had to have some words with a few. So but it's changing so radically because the film industry itself, if you look at the history of it, you used to have a photochemical process. You literally had to take your film, and I hope your audience knows what film is, but it was, a nitrate strip, and you had to go to a lab and photochemical develop. It had to go into a chemical, and then it came out, which was a very expensive, specific quality control process. Well, if you didn't have a lab, you didn't have insurance. If you didn't have insurance, you didn't have a bond. And if you didn't have a bond, you didn't get financing. In other words, you had to have a lab. And you could make a cheaper film otherwise, but they may not look very good and they wouldn't sell in the world market. That's why Hollywood and the UK, I think to a great extent, dominated a lot of major filmmaking. And then all of a sudden that changed with digital for 6 to 8 to 10 years of transition. Well, now all you need is a nice camera and a story, and you're back to the Charlie Chaplin arena of storytelling. And Charlie Chaplin just said, look, what do you need to make it? I need a camera, myself, a girl, a cop, and maybe a dog or something like that. And I got a movie, right? Very simple. And it's true. Where Hollywood seems to be gravitating towards Mandalorian, Marvel, comic book hero stuff, which I think I've seen 3 or 4 of those, maybe 5. I don't find it very rewarding anymore. I mean, I thought they were interesting, 3 or 4, 5, but not 40.
No.
And and then where's the human storytelling? The smaller movie where you go, oh my God, they're in this paradox of real humanity and authenticity, the energy we're talking about. That's what I think you capture in a movie in many cases. Sure, you could have comic book stuff, but 40 of them, and The Mandalorian or whatever. I mean, it's interesting, Star Wars, but I mean, it keeps going and going, and you see it gets bigger, 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 bigger. But the economics of it aren't there because it's changing in the digital world. You get more competition, but you also get more stories. I mean, the biggest countries, as far as I understand, making feature films are India, number one. And you know what number two is?
Yeah.
Nigeria.
Where?
Nigeria.
Oh, Nigeria. I missed it. I just heard Nigeria.
Oh,
Right. Okay.
Nigeria.
Okay.
And then I think it goes to the US, and then I think it might go to UK, then Germany and France, et cetera, et cetera. But they produce, it's 210, 230 million people. They produce a lot of material and very, probably very, very linguistically recognizable. And then, the dynamics of that society are familiar. So obviously it makes it very financially rewarding, probably much more along a very modest structure compared to what the Hollywood structure is, enormously, logistically driven.
Well, a nice link here, as you were talking about budgets, and obviously what I asked you about in terms of the darker side, is the fantastic movie that's been recently released called The Sound of Freedom. And you've actually seen it. I haven't been able to see it yet because it's not in the UK until the 1st of September. But this is a classic example of what you've just been talking about in terms of smaller budgets, because these guys, well, you can tell the story because you know more about the ins and outs of it than me, but they had a very small budget and it took them 5 years to get this film actually out, didn't it? So, and this film is based on it's not based on a true story. It is a true story because the guy that plays Tim Ballard, Tim Ballard is a real life hero, not a Marvel hero, and he rescues trafficked kids for a living all over the world, and he's actually been very instrumental in this film being written and produced and directed and all the other stuff. So tell us a little bit about that, because I know you know some of the people that are involved in that film.
Yes, I actually was working on a project which is also coming out through Angel Studios. I found out I worked on it briefly. It's called Cabrini, and it is, to my understanding, the first American. She was an Italian woman who came to the United States and mandated by a cardinal and the Pope, I believe, to help Italian orphans, particularly in the United States, in New York City, which at the time, literally, people would show up, the parents would die, and these kids were on the streets in these horrific conditions. And she became the first American saint, beatified by the Pope. And so it's a remarkable story, actually. And this woman who was not supposed to live past the age of 30 due to ill health was enormously driven to succeed. Another admirable, excuse me, admirable portrait of somebody to look at. So that was on Cabrini, and it was going to be shooting in Buffalo, which it did. I just had left the project with my associate earlier than we started. But the director was Alejandro Monteverde, who directed Sound of Freedom. The DP was a gentleman by the name of Gorka, and the production designer, Carlos. And a couple of the producers on that were executive producers, I believe, on Sound of Freedom. So it was an interesting thing where the movie came out and I kind of vaguely heard about it. And my understanding is that it was financed and wound up at Fox, 20th Century Fox, which was sold along with Hulu to Disney. And Disney did not want to release it. So subsequently, it was bought by Angel Studios, who went to both Netflix and Amazon and said, "We have this movie. Do you want to buy it?" And they said no. So Angel Studios, which are four brothers out of Utah, I think they started that company. And ultimately, they started it. I think I can't remember the name of their original company, but I think it had to do with something like called Vid Angel, which basically said, "Look, there's scenes in movies we don't want our kids to see." And so therefore it's kind of a cuts out language or certain things, to make it more fitful for young people. I think they were sued, copyright infringement, something of that nature came into the case. So then they had to stop that operation, but they came back as Angel Studios. And ultimately, boy, they really hit the mark on this. I think I looked it up yesterday or the day before, and I think it's hit $160 million. The budget shot in Colombia was about 14 million, I believe. And so if this independent movie got 30 million in this environment, remember, we're in a very difficult theatrical environment. People are not going back to the movie theaters except for, strangely enough to me, Barbie and Oppenheimer, which I'm like,
what the hell?
Yeah, I don't quite understand that, but I I think it's indicative of the times that there is a need for such put your head in the sand kind of diversion that we're going to go see this. But people have a right to laugh, and if they do, great, okay, have fun. But I don't get it, but so be it. I don't get a lot of things that people pick for movies anyway. I get, that's just human nature. But
Yeah,
I can't see a bigger contradiction between the two subjects.
yeah, I know. But Sound of Freedom was released on the 4th of July, wasn't it, over in the States, but
Yes.
only in selected theatres. And the way that they did it was pre-sales. So they had this goal of selling 2 million tickets to represent the 2 million trafficked children, even though we know 2 million is a really low estimate. And they also, through the website, allowed people to buy tickets and pay them forward for people that can't afford to go to the movies, because obviously
Yeah.
going to the movies is not cheap these days. And so the whole way that they did it and the intention that they set, against all the odds, against being held back for 5 years and all of that, talk about resilience, creativity, and putting your faith in God, divine source, whatever you want to call it, and having the right people influence and be part of that movie. Because Jim Caviezel, I probably said that wrong again, plays Tim Ballard, and I watched The Passion of Christ last week or whenever it was with my son and his girlfriend, and wow, it's graphic. Have you seen that film?
Yes.
Oh, it's graphic, and very cleverly shot, and like there isn't much because it's all in Hebrew, right? And so you've got subtitles, but there isn't much of the speaking, so don't let that detract you. But what a visual sensation that movie is, and I mean, it's hard to watch in terms of the sheer evilness that they did against this, against Jesus. But yeah, so Jim played the obviously Jesus Christ, and Jim is now playing Tim Ballard in this movie, and I can't wait to see it. But my whole point of that is they had to think outside the box. They were being censored at every step of the way. They created this website, they did these pre-sales, and so theaters had to put it on in the end because they created the desire for people to want to see this film. I've seen this film. I've been seeing interviews for this film for 3 years, so I knew it took at least that long. And I've been chomping at the bit to see it, and I've only got a few weeks to wait now, because the message of that, that it's not just child trafficking, it's human trafficking as well, is probably now a bigger industry than the drug industry. And
Yeah.
because you can sell a person many, many times and make a lot of money from one person until they become surplus to requirements or whatever. But like you said, so many people, like with the Barbie movie, just stick your head in the sand, a load of shit. So it's just take your brain out and watch some crap to make me feel better about my own life for an hour and a half. Okay, great. Then what? Because your life still sucks at the end of it. And with something like Sound of Freedom, which is a truth-telling story, and it's a massive, 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 horrific issue that's going on in this world that we all need to know about, because if we all know about it, we can all be empowered to actually do something about it, because it's not just happening in the films, it's not just happening in Hollywood, it's happening in your next door neighbor's house, you know, it's happening everywhere. So yeah, I just love the fact that they, and Mel Gibson has been very vocal for this. And
Kevin James.
who?
Kevin James. He's a popular comedic actor, but I think he's a very strong Catholic, and he actually has, I think, been promoting it. He knows Leo, one of the executive producers, so I think he's done that. Mark Wahlberg, I believe.
Mark Wahlberg, yeah. You mentioned Denzel to me the other day, and I've seen something recently. He's now spoken out about it.
Yeah.
So all the good people, and hopefully there'll be more good people come forward.
And I, it's interesting. I read indeed that same statistic where somebody was talking about that indeed the trafficking of human beings has, one, exceeded the drug trade and others. I think the only thing that exceeds it is international arms sales, that sort of thing. But it actually exceeds now, I believe, the size of slavery when it existed for a couple hundred years, or it's been around forever. It just depends, and the word slave, I believe, came from Slavs, which were enslaved by the Roman Empire. I think there's some etymology there that it derives from, at least from the Western linguistic world. And it is rather stunning, of course, that you see that, silence is complicity. What does that mean? But the idea that I think here's people that had a film, and I've seen interviews with Edward Verostegui, I think is how you pronounce the producer's last name, and Jim Caviezel, obviously devout, and so is the director and the DP and the production designer. They're very devout Catholics from Mexico, or maybe I think one is from Colombia, and they're on a mission. There's no doubt of that, and they said this is something that needs to be exposed. And I think when people find that kind of a mission to help other human beings, you get interesting distortions here. Whereas the Christianity, people say, oh my God, I hate those people over this. And you go, well, they're actually trying to help people over here, whether they are doctors going into difficult areas or some kind of other kinds of help. And I think this is just one offshoot of that kind of activism to help people, help human beings. And I can't really think of anything more. I've read different things about the trafficking, and especially with kids. And I wish I hadn't read some of the stuff. I have to say, I really do, really do. But there was an incident here, or a couple examples, where literally a young woman was taken from, I think, somebody in, I don't know, North Carolina maybe, or something. And then she had held up a small sign that said, help me, until somebody saw it and just called the police, and here was a woman who was taken against her will. And so you also have these kind of things where there was kidnapping and trafficking and a number of other things, that have popped up recently because we're more aware. It goes back to that reticular articulating system, right? Now we have an awareness from Sound of Freedom. And I think what's really great about it is, see, these guys did it outside the system, and the system which just makes comic book movies, and the math doesn't work. And they did it in a country that makes mathematical sense. And I think the other part is the authenticity. At least when I saw an interview on Eduardo and talked to people that knew him, the producer, and the other people involved, I mean, they are genuinely devout and dedicated, and certainly Jim Caviezel is. And so you have this film starting from a point of authenticity. I believe this is a problem, and I'm going to do something about it. How many times do you get that in a movie? I mean, where somebody says, I'm going to expose something. And Hollywood used to, and did on and off, do these kind of, have these inflection points where you did Gentleman's Agreement with Gregory Peck about anti-Semitism. You did a number of other kinds of films that brought issues to the forefront and used the power of cinema. The interesting thing about movies, when you go theatrically to a movie, and I have a theory about this, but it's just me probably having too many cards one day and writing stuff down. But when you go to a theater, what you do is you have to focus. So now I've got 100% of my focus on the screen. I'm with people I don't know. So we have a common human bonding of emotion at that given moment. And you and I have talked about energy and the use and the idea that we're operating at certain internal energies and frequencies, that sort of thing. And then everything gets dark. Okay, so our system starts to slow down. And then all of a sudden something pops up and it's directly going into our brain on this enormous imagery. And we're taken along on this tale and whatever the story is. And it's really is, I think, a bit a religious experience in the sense of religion experience, a routine, a ritual by which someone is enlightened and evolving in our thinking. And if you think about it, now if I go back and reflect back on a million years ago, Mel and Michael were out hunting dinosaurs. And of course, what happens is we go and catch this dinosaur, we bring it back to the tribe, and now we got something to eat, as it were. And we have this huge fire in front of us. And the tribe is here, our tribe, and everybody's eating real happy, right? And they go, well, tell us how you guys did it. Mel, Michael, tell us. And so we're here on the other side of the fire, and it projects up onto the rock behind us in this safe spot that we're in, this little cul-de-sac, so we could defend it. Up on this rock, it projects our shadows, 50-foot shadows, right? Think about it. I'm just trying to reflect back on how far our brains go back to this kind of, now the story, Michael and Mel might have been hiding behind the rock with a stick, but all of a sudden we're on top of that rock trying to fight off this dinosaur during the story because we magnify our credentials and our virtues and our everything.
Yeah.
But that becomes myth, and myth becomes the thing we gravitate towards. Myth is whether it's these people who pursued Sound of Freedom in a big myth pursuit of justice and courage and exposure and doing the right thing, or the myth of you and I hunting that we're explaining to the tribe because we'll get more credit, right? But theatrical films, I think, have an extremely powerful echo in our consciousness this way. And when I did see Sound of Freedom, I have to tell you, I had met Tim Ballard only very briefly many years ago. So, I mean, here's a guy who's dedicated a lot of his life to doing something that, I mean, how many people are going to have that effect? Very, very few. But when you watch Sound of Freedom, what I found interesting is I felt this rage inside me, like just rage, where I'm like, how do you do this? How do you, I can't. And but I could feel the anger coming up right now, just going, you just hunt these people down. And I don't think you could remediate their souls almost with this is what you do to children, right? I mean, so it has a very visceral effect, particularly I was thinking about the first Taken movie, which was very well done. And you literally had fathers who, had no spine, they're hunched over. And then all of a sudden, when did you see the Taken movie? And they were like, all of a sudden they literally grew a spine. And then they go, I'd kill those, it's two if it was my daughter, because the father-daughter relationship is unique in its own way. And you literally had, I saw it time and time and time and time again about people that said, oh yeah, you just go get her back. There's no mercy with you or this hideous, evil character. And that's kind of what movies are meant to be, is to have this sense of urgent, necessary virtue, shall we say, a sense of justice, a sense of that. And I think that's the a point in Sound of Freedom. It's hit not only an audience that said, well, give us something big and powerful. And there's certainly a lot of controversy these days in school boards across the United States dealing with the curriculum. And I think there's some part of that, which is another whole other Michael Mel chatterbox moment. But but I think there's an echo there which says these are kids. And I teach martial arts. I taught 10, 11, 12-year-olds primarily, but other kids a little bit. And they are meant to be protected. And so I can't imagine something more evil than that almost. I think, like you said, the modern slavery of trafficking is kind of reminds me of like World War II and how the Jews were treated is, not quite the same, but it's like millions and millions of people. And it's an interesting time because we are at I think I've told you about my generational theory that I read about, which basically says about every 80 years there's massive change. So at the end of World War II to 2010 or so, there would be a period of vast change. It's called Generational Theory by Strauss and Howe, and people could read it and make up their own minds, whatever they want to do. But throughout history, there's certainly periods of turmoil and where you question a lot of things, in which case 15 years ago, Bitcoin was nothing. Streaming was nothing. Digital was just starting. So we have all these little mini revolutions in industry. Drones, if you look at about warfare, satellite communications, more. People launching satellites that are private companies. So it goes on and on and on. And I think we're in that moment where Sound of Freedom kind of comes in and goes, we're in a revolutionary kind of moment. And then all of a sudden it kind of comes in and gets people thinking more. It's really served people seeking something more about, well, what's going on in the world? What's the truth of the matter? And the fact that a lot of corporate media just dismisses it. They should say, I think, is there something to this or not? Let me investigate. And I think the smallest amount of investigation, granted, I'm a little dubious when everybody says, just Google it. And I'm like, well, it's not just Googling it. It's like, what source are you actually getting? And cross these sources a number of times till you get a fitful representation of the truth that you are looking for, cross-index the info. But just the idea that some corporate media has not done an expose about this, they used to in like 60 minutes or something.
They're even calling it a conspiracy theory. They're like Rolling Stone mentioned QAnon. It's like, what? This is somebody's true story. This is actually a true story. How can it be a conspiracy? It's just absolutely bonkers. And just on your reference there about World War II, and we know this has been going on a hell of a long time. And yes, modern slavery, I think we're all slaves to a certain degree, but obviously that is the horrific slavery. But I told you, didn't I? I had a fantastic chap on the podcast last week who has written a book about his parents through World War II and the atrocities that they went through. It's like it's a love story. And he talked about his sister, his 3.5-year-old sister. He wasn't born at the time. This was before he was born, being taken by the Germans after being found underneath the floorboards. And he said there were 1,600 children that they were aware of in that particular locality that were apparently taken and shot. And when you think back to that, what did or didn't happen, and I wasn't there, I don't know, but I can only surmise. Why would they want to take the children? The children were of no threat to them whatsoever. And they shot them. Well, they probably didn't, did they? They probably did other things before those children ended up ending their life, however old or however horrible that happened for them. But that, in my mind, that can be the only reason that all of a sudden 1,600 children were taken.
You know, it's funny because it's strange because I definitely read a great deal about history and a great deal about World War II history. Some of the books, I was going to take a course to get a degree in World War II history. It's still on my my list of to-dos here, and I actually went through the books there that and I've read, I think, all but two of them anyways. And when you look back at that period of time, not all that long ago, I mean, my father was in the war, and I'm sure your grandfather or father or somebody was in the war. Everybody was. And it was this pivotal time when you have to put your mind around this. It was not certain that the Allies would win. It was very, very, very much in doubt. And to be in this moment of, we could actually lose this, and this is what the consequence was indeed these 1,600 children and more taken, brutalized, and then shot. And you look at Baba Yar or Katyn, I mean, all this kind of, which was the Soviets proven actually, but I mean, the scale is just unbelievable of this inhumanity in World War II. There was something I came up just last year. I was looking through the Pacific Campaign and war criminals in the Imperial Japanese Army. And I was looking at forms in an archive, just seeing what they had. And they actually have a form, and it said, what war crime? And it said summary execution, I can't remember all of them, but one was summary execution, starvation, this and this and this. And they actually had a box for cannibalism.
Wow.
Now, it wasn't a note like you'd write it in. It was a box you'd check. A box you check means it's could be common. And I was rather stunned at that because I'd heard incidents, but not that you had a box you would check. And so when you read about these children and how they, the camps and what they endured and what people had to go through, and I read many books about that, all the camps, and I visited them, at least Dachau. And you could actually see the inhumanity to man in its most horrific fashion, which of course we're seeing in like Sound of Freedom. There was a book, there's some really amazing books about the average person in the war at the time. And one would be Soldiers in the Pacific by Robert Leckie or Ernie Pyle to some degree, and a couple others. But there was a book written by a German soldier on the Eastern Front by the name of, I'm trying to think of the name of the book, but it's by Guy Sager. And so he was a soldier from Alsace-Lorraine, which was a French territory taken by the Germans. So he spoke both French and German. It's that one territory that went back and forth between France and Germany for 300 years or something. So he was sent to the Eastern Front. He was in service on the Eastern Front, I think, for 3 years with 2 weeks off, something like that. And there's this passage that I read where literally it was so cold they needed boots. And they came across these other soldiers who were dead, and they needed the boots, right? Because they're freezing to death. And you have to have boots 2 sizes or so, 3, bigger than your feet, because you had to put 2 or 3 layers of socks and then put the boots on. So you had to find the right boots. It became that. And this guy, quite matter of factly, and this is the thing that sticks in my head when I read that particular passage, is he goes, okay, so it's cold. We had to saw off the guy's legs. Then we had to take the boots with the legs in them and put them by the stove to thaw them out so we could pull the foot out to get the boots.
Wow.
And when you read that, you go, this is a guy whose diminished self is to the point where this is kind of matter of fact.
Yeah.
This is, and you know, it's obviously something. I think I read that book 15 years ago, maybe 20, and it sticks in my head because, oh yeah, what are you doing? Oh, nothing.
Yeah.
Like what? But our capacity to endure this Sound of Freedom or the murder of these children, human capacity to either deflect or say it's not possible, goes to both the human need to avert our eyes or avert from seeking the truth, as painful as it is. In all 3 cases, the children, the cannibalism, or this thing about the boots, or the trafficking, 4 cases, I guess, but this is life, and it's not meant to be just nice and rosy and everything else. It's meant to be, you have to learn how to deal with this. And if it's not, there's a great line that I think was said, if there is trouble, let it be in my time, so my children may live in peace.
Mm.
And I think there's something to that when you get a bit older, as you and I have had some good discussions about people and people's BS and societal BS and a number of other things, that you can kind of sit there and go, nope, bring it on. We're ready to go. And I think a lot of society is at a certain point with all these revolutions that have come to be, whether it's economic turmoil we're currently going through, which I think the government is kind of saying, well, inflation's only 4% or 6%. And if you look at other equations, you go, no, it's closer to 15, 16, 17. And then you see things that are conspiracy theories, as you said, and you go, all you have to do is go Google this one. Conspiracy theories that came true.
Yeah.
Literally, you'll see lists and lists of like, oh, I didn't know that was thought to be a conspiracy theory. And that was I think it was a term invented by the CIA in the 50s anyway.
Yeah.
So just that says, well, you should do your own due diligence, but be willing to be proven wrong or in your thinking to learn, to seek the truth. Go, damn, I don't like that. I'm not right. And I wish I was right, but I'm not. And I mean, you have to have that ability. I think if you're never going to settle for things, right, you have to have the ability to be that person that walks 15 feet away and turns on yourself and goes, you got to do better in this way. Don't settle, never settle, right? And
yeah,
I think there's that as well for the big picture of those 1,600 children and the little picture of yourself. It's all the same frequency, right, in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that. I love that way you're perfect storyteller, aren't you? I love the way you brought that right round to the never settle. Absolutely perfect. And we're an hour and a half in, so I think I know we can talk about lots more than this, but I think we spoke about this before anyway. I'm going to put this into 2 parts, I think, to make it more digestible chunks. But thank you so much for sharing some of the insights into Hollywood and obviously how you got into Hollywood and your writing, and there's like loads more that you do. But to sort of round off this this conversation, is Hollywood, so 2 things really, is Hollywood all you thought it would be in terms of the career that you've had, and is it a place that continues to allow you to grow and evolve and be able to be creative? And lastly, I always like to leave these conversations with anything you feel called to share, whether it be about your life or whether it be about the world at large or whatever. So yeah, has Hollywood been what you thought it would be? And yeah, I'm not going to repeat it. You know what I said.
Sure. Well, Hollywood being all it would be, it certainly, I think you get a picture of what it could be when you jump in and start to work in things, and then you realize it's actual work in a lot of ways, or more work than one intended. A couple times I've pursued things outside of it, basically in terms of I was going to work on a video game. I did that for a bit, just try something new, didn't like it. There's something magical about watching the point of creation of something that will theoretically last forever, and ideally artistic expression of human beings having disagreements and conflicts and all this. It's the ultimate drama or comedy or whatever, but this kind of being played out on a human scale that I find so enchanting. And that actually, a friend of mine said, "Boy, here you on one of the Taken movies and walking up and looking at the set." He goes, "It's like you'd never seen a movie set before." And I'm glad he actually said that, because I've always had this sense of wonder and amazement about it. At the end of the day, when all is said and done, I went on a little bit of a magic journey, I think. And I don't regret that one bit. As far as the dynamics now, I think are shifting, and people, I've gone to a conference called VidCon, VIDCON, which are now worldwide, which presents alternate media, online streaming, and some of the most dynamic, unique opportunities for people. Obviously making things right off their phone and everything low budget, not high-end cost. Hollywood's a hierarchy, but the hierarchy is dissipating very, very much. Sound of Freedom and Angel Studios, case in point, they're guerrilla filmmakers in a way, or guerrilla distributors at least. And the idea you shoot outside the country and a vital story that would get censored, etc. Great, put it out there. See who goes to see it. You should have a right to say what you want to say. So that VidCon and other things like that is an area. I actually got a computer to do animations. I'm not really done a lot of it, so I'm jumping in and just going, okay, what's this do? It's kind of fun and enthusiastic to go in and try and break things, right? Oh, restart the computer. Believe me, I'm doing that. Going, oh, I locked it up somehow, whatever. As far as parting words go, I guess I certainly enjoy our discussions, because we cover a lot of interesting territory, which is very meaningful to me. I very truly look forward to our moments and our meditations on our Monday thing. And the fact that I think you're my little UK anchor of knowledge over there. You're holding down the whole island as far as I'm concerned, right? So that gives me hope to say, oh, there is insight over there, or a willingness. I don't think we'd agree on everything. I mean, who knows? We don't talk about absolutely everything, but you have a willingness and a curiosity to question, which is great. And that's, I think, the big key and a big takeaway, I'd say, is keep questioning and keep finding opportunity. And if it's little skills people can build, even this thing about the notebook is just something I do and other people can do, but you might really like this, you might hate it. But if you keep finding the little pieces and tools and skills that do work for you, and that you go, oh, I like that one. Now, that one, I'm not, okay, I'm putting that aside. But you got to keep finding, because we're all unique human beings. And I think never settling is about never settling on one method when you could find another, and then just you could spring ahead. I think that's the key, is to always be a little uneasy in your seat.
A little uneasy in your seat. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Michael. If people want to reach out to you, where would be the best place for them to do that?
Well, professionally, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm also on Facebook, where I have my own personal page, but I have one called the Scholar Warrior Group. And whereas the scholar warrior is the sense of engaging intellectually, and then the fighting part, because I do martial arts for a long time, so it's kind of both. But the artists always have to fight with themselves anyway, so you're fighting one way or the other. Those are a couple. I'm on Instagram, which I'm actually elevating a lot, with also little videos about diversionary thinking, etc. That is the Instagram handle is Mickey Blue Eyes. So I had it before Hugh Grant.
I was going to say, yeah, that's Hugh Grant film.
Now, a friend said, "What's your mafia name, Michael?" And I said, "I don't think I have one." He goes, "It's Mickey Blue Eyes." I go, "Okay." And that's and then they did the movie, and I'm like, "Oh, okay. I got to have a talk with Hugh about this, I guess." But so Mickey Blue Eyes, and I'll also have Scholar Warrior Way there as well. So I love to engage with people, and people have new ideas. I learn from other people every single day. I think that's the important thing to do. I always learn from you every time, Mel. I go, "Oh, that's interesting. And I've actually referenced you a few times going, "Oh no, my friend Mel in the UK said that, I'm sure."
God.
So I think you might, yeah. So
thank you. Well, yeah, likewise. I'm always learning from you. I mean, you're a lot more widely read than me. I'm more about the feeling and the headline than I am about. I mean, I love reading and all the rest of it, but in terms of your level of detail, it's like you really go into all of it, and that's not me. But I can tell a short story. I don't need to tell all of the detail to get the same message across. But
100%.
But the left-brained of this world, they like that evidence, they like that validation and all the rest of it, and that's completely understandable as well. So thank you so much. It's been an absolute joy.
You're welcome.
I knew it was going to be lovely, and you've told me some stories today that I hadn't heard before, which is cool. And thank you. You're an absolute light in this world, and keep doing you, as I know you will, because you are unmistakably you. And thank you. And I'll share this with you when it's ready. And hopefully you'll get as much enjoyment out of re-listening as I will.
I'm sure I will. And it's been a delight. Thank you so much, Mel. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you.